So our first peanuts that were starting to come out today. I noticed some of the soil was pushing up. We tested several of these in different containers and stuff just to see if we'd get some sprouting. It looks like these Virginia peanuts will sprout. They're not treated, I guess, with any kind of anti-growth chemicals. So let's put some on top of this raised bed number 2 where we had some loose soil right. Don't usually do this left-handed, but we will push them in here. I'm not going to film all this. I'm going to put probably 15 or so in here. But yep, there they are, big old Virginia peanuts. So I filled the whole area up with peanuts, and hopefully, they're nitrogen fixing. Any kind of legume is nitrogen fixing. So, hey, if we get some peanuts and maybe it helps feed this bed, we'll see. Right, so we put the peanuts in there in that bed all over it. And peanuts are a legume in the pea and bean family. So they're nitrogen fixing. So they'll help provide nitrogen to that avocado and other plants in the bed. So, and hopefully it'll help stabilize the loose soil and tighten it up a little bit more. So to minimize rain and stuff, just making it collapse and go wash away somewhere. Here on raised bed 1, we have a little area that doesn't really have a lot of dirt there that we just spread a bunch of peanuts out on. Now we're going to kind of cover it with dirt. We might need another scoop and kind of push it down there. Alright, so we put 2 scoops of dirt over top of them. Again, when you do these beds, if you wait long enough, you will have dirt. This composts down into dirt. Everything you put in this bed. But if you don't have 2 or 3 years or whatever for everything to completely turn into something that you can use, you can always use compost from your compost bin, garden soil from your local, a landscape supply company or whatever. Check this out though. There's our comfrey from one of that we planted a week or 2 back, and it's already coming out and it looks so awesome. Comfrey is one of those plants that I guess a lot of people up north hate, but down in the south where it's not as easy to grow, it's a very pretty plant, and people have made use out of it. Of course, we in the deep south, they are very finicky, so they're somewhat harder to grow or to keep happy. I've heard people had them randomly die, so they'll start out with 5 plants and they'll have 2 or 3, in a couple years. But my experience so far is they're happy, sad. Too much sun, too much whatever makes them sad. Then they perk up and get happy, and then they're sad again and droopy. And so far we haven't had any die yet, but hey, that looks really good now. We'll see what it looks like in the summertime. Leopard frog. In Florida, I don't think I've ever seen a 3-foot tall dandelion. I know up north they sell them in grocery stores. They get 3 foot plus. But check that out. I don't know why this guy's so big. It's like a freak here in Florida. People usually hate dandelions, but I wish I could consistently grow just a bed of them for teas and stuff like that. I used to collect dandelions, flowers, leaves, roots and stuff, and make tea all the time. In the south, they grow really short usually, and of course the flowers pop up on a longer stem. And I've had the seed heads and stuff and kind of sprinkled them around soil and stuff, and never really had luck with them growing like that. That freaky looking caterpillar. Big sucker too on the pineapple. Day has passed, but this is one of the ones we grafted last year, pawpaw, and you can see it's leafing out. Original graft is right there, so it's got a limb there, and then this is the rootstock here. Knowing what we do about how YouTube, their algorithm, their keywords, this and that, we know that a lot of times we do have to kind of explain, re-explain things that we've explained before, because chances are a large percent of our viewers would say, okay, well, what does he mean about this? What is he referencing? And sometimes we do feel the need, like we have to explain what we're doing, like the raised edge wood chip bed or our paw projects or whatever. So Jerry Lehman, which is, I guess he passed in 2019, was a breeder of American persimmons and pawpaws, and he imported stuff from Russia and all kinds of stuff like that. I've heard that he recommended planting 2 pawpaw trees in the same planting hole. You know, and a lot of people don't think that's a good idea, but, you know, pollination is a big factor with these, which is, you know, a lot of people hand pollinate pawpaws to maximize fruit set. They don't get pollinated by bees and wasps and stuff like that in general. They get pollinated because they predate, I guess, the bees. They were, you know, carrion beetles and flies and stuff like that that are attracted by like rotting meat, you know, like a corpse or whatever. So people hang rotting meat on tree 1, rotting meat on tree 2. So these beetles and flies, they go back and forth between the 2 trees, and hopefully they touch pollen from flower 1 to pollen from flower, you know, tree number 2, and vice versa. So it's kind of like pineapple guavas, where some people say plant them in the same hole. Just shake the tree a little bit when both of them are in bloom, and to maximize, you know, pollen set. If it's that hard to get pollination on pawpaws, then planting them in the same hole, you know, just wind would probably pollinate. Look what just arrived today. So we're gonna try this 5G gateway from T-Mobile out, and we were told to use an address that is different from ours from the T-Mobile dealer. So let's see if it works. They have GPS and geo blocking and everything, so it may or may not work here. We might have to take it back today. But Starlink didn't work for us. I wasn't expecting this router to be so big. I thought it'd be like one of them 2x2 or 3-inch hotspots like the cell phone companies or whatever do. So you get a little stand piece with it there, which you can swivel, but before you put it in, you hook your Ethernet or whatever in there. There's 2 RJ45 Ethernet connections, as well as external antenna connections, and of course the power USB-C power adapter. A mirrored LCD screen there, which has some in the power button and our OK button or whatever it is with the left and right scroll things, so you can do some settings there. It's pretty heavy too. We bought some champagne mangoes a few days ago, and they went from good to bad pretty fast. They all looked good when we got them. They were kind of wrinkly, but they still had a lot of tang in them. But then like instantly they get this darkness, and it goes like from the skin through, you know, to the middle of the fruit. Yeah, I used to cut the hard shell, you know, the seed completely out of the shells to like propagate mango seeds. These guys are polyembryonic, which means they come true to seed. So we're gonna dry a few of these seeds out and then plant them and see what happens. So for those that may be wondering, you know, like why we are trying 5G T-Mobile 5G home internet service, we had tried to get Starlink. We had Starlink for almost a month. Of course, they let you trial it for a month, but you have to prepay the hardware cost and a month of service. But if it doesn't work out, you get the return shipping label. So free shipping back. They give you your equipment cost back and your month of service. And we had something like 600 gigabytes of, you know, data that had moved across the service, but it just was not stable enough for us to do like real-time Wi-Fi calls, video conference, Zoom meetings and stuff like that. I just ran a speed test, and here it is. So how does it compare to Starlink, and why did I go to Starlink first or at all when we have DSL internet? So we have about 2 bars on our signal just close to one of our windows, and yeah, it seems to be fairly stable. We haven't made any or much Wi-Fi calls yet. We're going to, you know, demo it over the next few days. You get like 14 days of a trial, full money back, I believe. You are kind of renting the hardware, so if you stop the service and don't send the router back, they charge you what, like $275 or something like that. With that said, it seems like the speeds are pretty much the same as Starlink. Maybe the upload is a little bit slower at times based on our you know, few hours messing with it. But the download, here's the thing, peak times, I'm still getting around 200 plus megabits per second on T-Mobile, and our peak times with Starlink, we would go down to maybe 40 to 90 or so megabits per second. So it seems like at peak times on our local tower, we have faster speeds. I have ran multiple tests moving the router in different areas, and there are places where we'd get 1 bar. There are places where we would get 3 bars, and it seemed like it wasn't holding at 3, and the transfer, the speeds weren't as high. So where we have it now, and at least until we get maybe an antenna set up, an external one, indoor or outdoor or whatever, at 2 bars, we're still hitting somewhere over 300 megabits sometimes. So probably anywhere from like 170 to over 200 most of the time. So even at 2 bars, if the signal is stable, you know, long term for Wi-Fi calls and video conferencing and all that, that should be, you know, definitely better than what we're getting on Starlink. We sort of felt the need to explain, you know, that we weren't reviewing Starlink, and we made a video called "This is not a review on Starlink," and sort of gave it a thumbs up if it works for you. And here's why it did not work. There is our northern sky, and we cleared out some trees and stuff in that area, and for the most part, you know, with the angle of the dish and where it was on top of the roof, it wasn't really getting obstructed that way. But on our northeast here, with that oak tree there, and all these crepe myrtles and red maple, and a big giant red maple on the southeast side, as well as maybe a little bit of that oak tree on the southeast, and then southwest another maple here. That was messing up our view. Starlink has an app that, you know, it fills in the map in about 12 hours. And, you know, it'll start out with red dots on every obstructed area in the sky, and in 12 hours it fills like the whole area up wherever it's obstructed. Based on some people's comments, you know, the southeast, southwest, you know, they were like, it blew their mind that, you know, these were obstructing, you know, the view of the sky, despite it being faced northeast, the satellite, because, you know, it's got a huge angle of, you know, places where it gets the satellite signal from. There's motors and stuff in the dish you get, the Starlink dish, that, you know, kind of tracks satellites as they move around the sky. So even though you're aimed that way, this satellite's re-aim, you know, following the satellites, and it could be obstructed here in the southeast, southwest. You cleared out some of the trees in the northeast as well, even though, you know, it did better. It did much better, but it still just was not stable enough for the real-time stuff where you're not caching a lot of data, and it would drop phone calls and stuff like that, and video calls. And we had been looking at T-Mobile 5G for a while, as well as, you know, being promised by the Windstream Alltel Kinetic service that we would have fiber here for like 2-3 years or more. And, you know, it'll be here in 4 months, it'll be here in 6 months, it'll be here next year, and it never came. You know, there's fiber 200 foot plus that way on one of our county roads, and they claim that's not their fiber. They claim it's a contractor that's just running fiber to wherever. And then there's another fiber that went to one of our cell towers, which is probably providing the T-Mobile 5G data, you know, to the closest tower. So the cell phone tower company paid for the installation of the fiber to run to that tower, but I guess Kinetic is selling the actual data to that cell tower. We have 30 megabit DSL service with Kinetic, obviously, with about a 2 megabit upload. And, you know, when you have a connection like that, cable, you know, if you get 100 megabit cable or 30 megabit DSL, you pretty much never get those speeds when you run a speed test, even if you run it really close. And so you might hit 22 or 14 or 18 or 10 or 12 megabits on a 30 megabit connection, depending on, I guess, a number of factors. And you may be uploading at less than 1 megabit per second. And we were having a lot of problems uploading on YouTube with our DSL connection. Plus, it's been acting out a lot. We've had a technician over once already in the last week or so. We still have problems with it, which, if we decided to keep it, we'd have technicians out, I guess, in a few days from now, because even this morning it was messing up. So we have, when we upload our YouTube videos, even 1080p, we are losing connection sometimes, and it's after so many errors where errors out, it just doesn't continue that connection when we have to restart the upload completely, sometimes 2 or 3 times more. So we were in a race to figure out what our next option was, our upgrade. Is it going to be fiber? Is it going to be Starlink? Is it going to be T-Mobile 5G? Some other home internet service that uses a cell tower. So Starlink has about 5,700 active satellites in the sky, and they plan to have about double that, with the possibility of expanding to 42,000. And the Gen 3 dish at least can change satellites. It can change the satellites it's tracking, and aim toward a different one every 15 seconds. So, we could wait until they have all of their satellites in the sky, and then maybe it would give us close to 100%, reliability, and, be able to do those Wi-Fi calls and stuff. Or, fiber's not here. The last option we had been looking at for a while now, and every time we put our address in the a search thing, check, availability, and, maybe be on a list, guess what? They upgraded their tower. They never emailed us back saying, hey, it's available in your area. So despite upgrading their towers to faster, 5G and stuff, and this is a brand new tower, so they put a brand new tower maybe a couple miles from here, and they never emailed us. It's not available. So here, we went to the T-Mobile store because everybody was saying, just give them a different address. I had people, including in like a major area where there's towers all over, so you can use my address, but guess what? The towers are full. They sell so many customers, these home internet packages and cell phones services which use the same tower, and they're full. So the guy said, we used to sell customers these the routers, the T-Mobile 5G home internet routers, and just give a false address, but we started getting in trouble from doing that. They have, I guess they can geo-block the router. There is a what do you call it, GPS system built in the box now, so they know exactly where you're at. So a lot of people say, well, we've had no problems. We go to campground, we take a router and it works. Some people say, well, it only worked here. I was like a house or two away from my neighbors that had it, but I couldn't have it. But I was just outside of that zone and it didn't work. So it seems to be iffy, or maybe if you're using too much data or something, they cut you off. With that said, the guy, I guess they know the addresses that they can service. So the guy, within like 30 seconds, he found an address and said, here, either call this 800 number or Cure Team, or order this online. Tell them this is where you live. Just put a different mailing address in there. Even though the credit card and the mailing address and everything was different, the order went through. So I'm sitting here thinking, even though it went through and it was coming in the mailbox, are they going to see that it's not in the right location and just block it? But, so far today, it connected just fine and it's working. So we're going to give it a few days or 2 weeks or whatever, and hopefully we'll get rid of this slow DSL. Let's try to upload and see if we have good luck uploading and some stability on our real-time stuff, and hook all of our devices and streaming service. We had 2 streaming services already at one time going with the HD video, probably 1080p, and it was okay. Plus I was running speed tests and yada yada. Still got 170, 200 plus megabits per second while these other 2 streaming services were going on at the same time. So that's pretty amazing. They have like a 1.2 terabyte deprioritization, which is kind of like if you use 1.2 terabytes, they can throttle your connection until the next month or whatever. And I read in some circumstances they have, changed the 5G service to the LTE service unknowingly to the customer. I hope that doesn't happen, because you're limited to like 100 gigabytes a month. We probably use 800 gigabytes, probably less than 1 terabyte. So that's going to be important to us. Well, I'm getting ate up by mosquitoes out here, and the kids are going crazy in the house. So we're going to go ahead and end this video here. This is a garden vlog, and I guess a life vlog, or whatever you want to call it. Take care, guys.